able to spend a little time with you, and I'll be glad to take any question you may have on whatever subject. Nicole?
Hi, my name is Nicole Gaines, and I'm a senior at Academy Park High School. And because you're involved with President Reagan's cabinet and their affairs, how often is it that he takes your advice and suggestions in reference to his cabinet members?
Well, yeah, I think to answer the question, you have to understand our approach to this system of cabinet government. My job is principally to make sure that the material that comes to him for decision has been thoroughly reviewed, and he has the views of the members of his cabinet before he makes a decision. It's not so much my job to try to advise him or direct him or recommend to him what option to take among several on a particular issue. My job is more to make sure that we have a policy formulation and a decision-making process that gives him the best information available and a clear set of options that represents the thinking of his cabinet. Yes?
My name is Betty Feynman. I'm a junior at Garnet Valley High School. Can you tell me what it's like to work with Edwin Meese?
Well, it's a real pleasure. He is a man with a great sense of humor. He is a very warm and personable individual. He has been very responsive to the kinds of things that I'm interested in doing. He's given me a great deal of freedom to basically take a job that hasn't really existed before, with the broad range of responsibilities that this one seems to have grown into, simply because other presidents haven't made such wide use of their cabinet. We see each other frequently all day long, and he is someone easy to approach and easy to share problems and concerns with. He's somebody who is remarkable at his ability to synthesize vast amounts of information and produce clear, short, and concise directions and summaries of issues, whether it's for the staff or for the president. He does it all the time, and so it's been an altogether enjoyable experience. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jordan Sweeney. I'm a senior from Sun Valley High School. I'd like to know what made you decide to join the White House staff?
Well, joining the White House staff seemed like a marvelous opportunity. I had worked with Mike Deaver and Ed Meese and some others in California when the president was governor in California. I've known Ed Meese and Mike Deaver and to a lesser extent the governor or the president since the early 1970s. And Mike Deaver and I were working together in a public affairs consulting firm when Ronald Reagan was elected president. And when they began to put the administration together, they offered me the chance to come back and serve as assistant for cabinet affairs, and that sounded like a good place to be. And it was with people I knew and had a lot of respect for. And so I chose to leave California and come back here and accept this position.
Hi, my name is John Moore, and I'm a senior at Monsignor Bonner High School. Is it unusual, or do you think it's unusual for a man at your age to be at your position?
I don't know. I think that people would be generally surprised to find out how many young people there are throughout the White House and probably really throughout Washington in various positions of responsibility. I think we have a good mix here of people who are new to Washington, who may have been involved with the Reagan administration in California, and people who are maybe been involved in Washington to a greater extent and are older hands at the process here. I will claim that it probably had a great deal to do with luck that brought me here, but I think there are a great number of people who are in their 30s who have sensitive positions throughout the government, and since it's a fairly intense place and it takes a great deal of time out of every day, it's probably helpful to have a few of us who we may be aging fast, but we've got an energy level to keep going day after day. Yes.
Hi, I'm Brian Huntoon from Unionville High School. After President Reagan leaves office, do you plan to continue your future in politics, or?
Well, I enjoy politics and government. I was involved in this public affairs consulting business, which sort of allowed me to make a fair living and do what I enjoy doing, and that was nice. I think I might like to go back to that. I don't know whether as a consultant or joining a corporation or company. I don't think I want to stay in government for a long period of time. I might want to come back to it at some point, but I'd kind of like to get back out into the private business world. I sort of like small firms as opposed to large corporations, but I would expect it at some point to leave, maybe not leave Washington, but at least leave federal government. Yeah.
I'm Bob Benotton from junior at Packers High School. And I was wondering, what's the transition like from your consultant job to your present job right now?
I think we had a fairly large number of clients, and so the hours were long before I came here, and when we worked fairly hard. Nothing prepares you for the intensity of this place, since most of the countries, if not some of the world's tough problems, seem to land at your doorstep every day. And it's fascinating for that reason, but it's a very intense environment. The hours are long. I think one of the most difficult things is that you don't have an opportunity to get out very much. We start about 7 o'clock in the morning and are frequently here till 8:30, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. We have a nice facility to eat lunch at right in the West Wing of the White House. The disadvantage of that is that you do it all the time instead of going out and seeing people outside of here. So you tend to have a hard time escaping the 18-acre complex, and that's been a tough transition because I have spent a lot of time in the public affairs community meeting with and getting to know a lot of diverse and different people, and it's more difficult here to do that. Yes.
Evan McCarthy, Swarthmore High School. What kind of changes must be made on your part when a Secretary of State is changed mid-term, such as when Mr. Schultz took the place of Mr. Hay?
That cabinet change, and also the departure of Secretary Edwards and the arrival of Secretary-designate Hodel, really happens fairly swiftly. The system recognizes whoever's in the office of the Secretary. The support staff, for the most part, remains the same. They're at the State Department and presumably at the Energy Department. There'll be changes down the line. Although they're presidential appointees, the Secretary has a large say in who fills what position. So there'll be additional changes made. But really, in terms of dealing with either the State Department or the Department of Energy, not a lot changes. In this particular case with Secretary Schultz, he has a great deal of experience in the international economic area, so he's been involved more in some of the domestic and also international economic issues than the prior secretary, so we've probably seen more of him and gotten him more involved in areas that I'm involved in. He, of course, maintains the traditional role in the National Security Council, and that's another area that I'm not as directly involved in, but he immediately just picked up the work that was there for him to do. And of course, he stepped in the middle of a very difficult Mideast crisis, but the support people kind of swing in behind him, and the transition happens fairly quickly.
My name is Joseph Connor, and I'm a senior at Penwood High School. I understand that you're Vice President and Corporate Secretary of Deaver and Hannaford Incorporated. What exactly is Deaver and Hannaford?
Deaver and Hannaford is the public affairs consulting firm I've referred to a couple of times, and I gave up that position. I want to make clear when I came back here in January of 1981. It was a consulting firm which now actually no longer exists because one of the requirements when you assume a position back here is you give up all interest in a firm such as that. So both Mike Deaver and I left the firm to come here. But we had corporate clients, trade associations, individual clients, a couple of foreign governments that made news during the election, and in fact had Ronald Reagan as a client until he became president. We did really government relations and public affairs work in Sacramento, California, the western states generally, and back here in Washington. Yes?
Yes, my name is Mary Price, and I'm a senior at Chester High School. What are some of your major responsibilities?
My major responsibilities? We have now 7 cabinet councils. We have, in addition to the full cabinet, they meet about there's an average of about 3 Cabinet Council meetings every week. The President usually meets at least once a week with the full Cabinet, and frequently with a Cabinet Council during the week. So my office has a principal responsibility for coordinating the work of the Cabinet Councils. There's an executive secretary for each Cabinet Council. We work on developing the agendas, making sure issues are moving through this process, which is really designed to formulate policy options for the President. The system that we have in place is one in which, as I mentioned earlier, attempts to ensure that the President has the views and thoughts of his Cabinet. I might also mention of his White House staff as well before he makes a decision on any particular policy, set of policy options. So my office is responsible for staffing out the options and issues that come to the President for decision to all the relevant Cabinet agencies, Cabinet departments and agencies. We did a check after about the first 12 months and found out that we had roughly around 11,000 to 12,000 transactions in a year, which we've sent something out to a department and asked for information back. So the volume of paper is fairly substantial, but it does ensure that every time we take a paper to the President for decision, there's a package that's been developed that we know the views of the various senior officials in government, and the President can hear those views orally in a Cabinet meeting, or he can act on an issue without a meeting, and he does that quite frequently if there's not a conflict to resolve. But my office is responsible for that. Because of that kind of a responsibility, I spend a great deal of my time traveling through various meetings in the White House, which are held back to back and sometimes overlap all day long. It's not infrequent to have 18 or 20 hours of scheduled meetings, despite the fact you're only here only 12 to 16 hours. You have more meetings than you have time in the day to go to them, but we divide them up and go and participate in those in order to ensure that the views of the Cabinet are represented, or that if there's information to send back to the Cabinet departments, we're responsible for that as well. Ed Meese described it in the transition period as an office that he wanted to become the nerve center within the White House for the Cabinet departments, and so we perform all sorts of various services in line with that. Yes?
So my name's David Joseph. I'm a senior at Chichester Senior High School. And it said in 1974 you chaired the Advisory Committee on Youth in California. What exactly did you do? What was that committee?
Then Governor Ronald Reagan created the California Advisory Commission on Youth, really to pull together young people from around the state to bring some greater focus and attention on the problems of youth in California. It was a 15-member commission, as I recall, and we focused principally on some of the educational problems, juvenile justice issues, and that sort of thing that young people were faced with, and we reported both to the governor and to the state legislature, and I was there for the last. I think it was created in late '73, and we were there through '74, and then when Governor Brown came in, he kept us on for a while, and we slowly disbanded.
I'm Lester from Penncrest High School, and do you believe that the energy department is going to be phased out?
Well, we certainly hope so. We have tried to dismantle and transfer the elements of the energy department to appropriate agencies of government, and of course to do that requires legislation, and that legislation hasn't, frankly, moved very quickly through the Congress. I'm hopeful, and I believe it's Don Hodel, the new secretary, designates hope that he can begin to, as he gets involved, look at pieces of the department and perhaps transfer some of those out and scale down the activities of the department. What you have there is a long list of functions and activities, some of which are quite useful and valuable, but could be performed by other departments in the government. And if you were to do that and eliminate some that aren't as useful, you would reduce the cost based on the functions that you eliminated, and you would reduce the overhead cost of having a whole major cabinet department and a building and a facility filled with people. So we're still committed to phasing that down. We may do it more slowly than we initially thought.
It's not going to be any less effective.
We don't think it'll be any less effective at ensuring that we have adequate energy supplies and that we have a fair pricing policy, because in part we believe we can do more of that or do a better job of that by relying more on the market mechanisms as opposed to trying to get the federal government to somehow control or direct it from Washington. It hasn't really worked very well, in our view, in many of those kinds of functions, and so there's a lot of people and a lot of bureaucracy there that we think we could perhaps carve out. So there's somebody who hasn't asked. Yes.
My name's Rita Marie Pitts, and I'm from Springfield High School. What's a typical day at your job like?
Typical day. We start about 7:15 with a meeting that Ed Meese and Jim Jenkins and Ken Cribb and I have to sort of take a look at what's on the schedule for the day. If I need to prepare for that meeting, I'm sometimes here a little bit earlier. We have a informal session occasionally at 7:30 with a few of us prior to the senior staff meeting, which occurs at 8 o'clock. That lasts for about 30 minutes, and that's held in the Roosevelt Room, where about 30 of the senior White House staff get together, review the president's schedule for the day, discuss any issues that have arisen overnight or in the prior day, and develop any press guidance that people need to operate with, raise issues that some of the staff may have about what others are doing. At 8:30, there's usually a break where we go back and get a little bit of work done in the office. I go back, and if I have any action items flowing out of the senior staff meeting, I will communicate to the departments and agencies and make sure that we're following up and getting work done in that area. There's frequently a cabinet council meeting about 8:45 that both the Cabinet Council on Economic Affairs and the Cabinet Council on Trade use that time slot, and they meet a couple times a week each. So there's usually some cabinet activity. I may meet with my staff later in the morning at 10 or 11. When it rolls around to noontime, we have a series of working lunches. We have a working lunch every Monday with the President and about 8 or 9 of us to review issues for the week. We have a working lunch every Friday with Mike Deaver and Jim Baker and 3 or 4 others of us to review overall communication strategy and issues that we're dealing with in the White House. We frequently have a cabinet lunch, which will be held Wednesday or Thursday. So my point is there's usually a working lunch. In the afternoon, again, we have a scheduling meeting at least once a week in the afternoon. We have some cabinet meetings in the afternoon. There are numerous coordinating groups on various issues that we build into the afternoon. And at about 6:30 or 7 o'clock, the meetings stop, and you can turn your attention to a foot or so of paper that's managed to flow in throughout the day, and that eats up another couple of hours before you get tired and then take the reading home and do some reading at home. So it's as I say, it's a day full of a fair number of meetings. Each smaller meetings or one-on-one meetings spread throughout the day with press people, for a few of us anyway. I don't spend a lot of time with the press, but but a little bit of time with them. Meetings with colleagues and things like that. Yes, sir.
My name is James Moss, and I'm a junior at Academy Park High School. And I would like to know that when you was younger, did you have any idea that you would be in a position that you are now?
No, I really didn't. I've always enjoyed government, and I suppose when I went to school at UCLA, I got involved in student government there, and I was involved in state government when I was in California. I thought at some point I'd like to come to Washington. I didn't exactly plan that I would do it at this stage, but it worked out that way. I came here during the Ford administration. We had some projects, and I often think back to that time. In fact, I sat in this room, or stood in this room the other day and gave a briefing, and one of the people in the audience was Gerald Warren, who was Deputy Press Secretary in the Nixon and Ford administration, and it was about 8 years ago or so that I sat where you're sitting, and I watched Jerry Warden give the briefing, and it was astounding to have him sitting in the audience listening to me do the briefing. And it's but it's that kind of a place. It brings people in for a little while, and I suspect you keep coming back. Yes.
Do you believe in?
Go ahead.
Do you believe in staying the course, and if so, why?
I believe in staying the course. That was a useful rhetorical device that was developed for the congressional elections and the campaign, but it really represents what we've been saying and what the president's been doing for some time. You know, we campaigned, or he campaigned in 1980 on reducing the federal budget, on reducing the tax burden, on reducing the regulatory burden, and we spent most of the first year trying to accomplish that. We've spent a good portion of last year, and I suspect we're going to spend a fair amount of time for the next 2 years. We have an economic program in place that we believe in. We talked to a number of business organizations and companies who are having a more difficult time now than they've ever had, or that they've had in 20 or 30 years. But everyone that I talk to comes back at us and says, you know, despite the fact that orders are down, despite the fact that it's we're suffering a loss for this year, the first year in 15 years, don't change anything. Don't panic. Don't do anything differently. Don't start to some sort of massive federal bailout program. Try to reduce the deficit. Try to control the monetary growth. Try to drive down spending still further. Don't increase taxes. So the very people that we depend upon to really bring this economy around, the major industries and others, have really, despite the fact they're hurting as bad as they've been for a long time, they've really been the ones to say to us, don't change. And it was kind of after a series of those meetings that it occurred to many of us that stay the course was a sort of description we really wanted to stick with. We were down in New Orleans day before yesterday with the president, and he gave a speech to the savings and loan industry. That industry in the first year we were here was losing every month or every couple of months a few hundred savings and loans were going out of business, and that organization felt that while they supported the administration, they were in real trouble, and they needed help, and there were bailout bills proposed in the Congress that would have cost billions of dollars, which we opposed and didn't make the industry very happy. But that industry now is, with mortgage rates down, is really doing much better, and has there's going to continue to be some of the savings and loan institutions that will be merged, and the overall number may be reduced still further, but they were very enthusiastic and very supportive of what we were doing, and again made the same comment that they're better off now, and they see some recovery there, and they don't want us to do anything that's going to halt or stop that recovery. Now, yes.
As assistant of the cabinet, what do you feel are some of your stronger affairs?
Pardon me?
Some of your stronger affairs as the cabinet.
My stronger affairs? I'm not sure I know quite what you mean.
You're assistant to the president of the cabinet.
Right.
What are some of your affairs?
The kinds of things that I do or work on? I think that the job title, I'm never sure how descriptive it is of what I do. What I try to make sure of is that when we set priorities for the administration, and when we identify issues that we want to aggressively pursue, and maybe you could call those the affairs of the cabinet, that we're aggressively moving those through the decision-making process. So if we are working, as we did last year, on a housing policy, that we've got the Treasury Department, the Housing and Urban Development Department, OMB, our White House Policy Office, all working together trying to hammer out a housing policy. If we're trying to develop a trade strategy, The trade strategy, while you have a U.S. trade representative, and he's a very fine one, Bill Brock, you can't discuss trade without involving the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, State Department, Justice Department is involved in that. And we're working on a trade initiative right now involving all of those departments, including the Office of Management and Budget, because money is involved. And so part of the job is to make sure that we have an integrated policy formulation effort going on that produces a result. I add the last part because one of the problems that you have here, that any administration has here, is you can discuss something to death. If it's developed as a clear priority, it's part of my job and other people's too, to make sure that we bring about a successful conclusion to the discussion and present the issue to the President for a decision.
I read in a magazine article that the Department of Interior was leading a program to sell federal lands. The income from the sale, what's that being used for?
We've looked at the possibility of selling some of the surplus federal land, frankly, to reduce the national debt, which is now above $1 trillion. We have a fair amount of land that we believe is surplus, and can be sold. So it presumably would go to offset the federal debt.
Thank you for sharing your time, Mr. Fowler.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.